Welcome back to another episode of This Week in the NHL, your favorite weekly hockey recap show. Lots of changes happening across the league, from goalie swaps to franchise player trades, all the way to, you guessed it, more injuries and, believe it or not, a pretty big firing. So if you guys have been enjoying the content lately and you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe now. We have a ton of stuff to get into today, so I'm going to keep this intro short and sweet, so let's just hop right into it. So why don't we go ahead and start with the thing that I just mentioned at the end of that intro, a pretty big firing that I think fans have been asking for a long time. The Buffalo Sabres announced that they have relieved GM Kevyn Adams of his duties with the franchise. Adams was the GM in Buffalo for 6 seasons, and let's just say his tenure there, it's going to be memorable, but probably not for the reasons that he had hoped. In his time with Buffalo, the Sabres never finished higher than 20th in the league and only had 1 season above 500 without making the playoffs a single time. Adams was responsible for a few good things, but largely his tenure was filled with a lot of bad decisions. And let's go through some of the highlights just to give you guys a good idea of why Buffalo fans are so happy with this firing. Adams did bring in a few players. Tuch, Norris, Stone, they're all solid. But this was all at the expense of losing better players, Eichel, Cousins, and Peterka. Not to mention he let one of the league's top goal scorers in Sam Reinhart walk and let go of key free agents like Linus Ullmark. One of the comments on this post actually says he built a good farm team for Stanley Cup winning teams. Just there could not be a more true statement here. All in all, I would say that Adams' tenure with the Buffalo Sabres has been a massive failure, from hiring the wrong head coaches to having the right talent but then letting them walk, or just not getting the talent that he has on his roster to perform at the level that we were all at least anticipating. I'm talking about like the Owen Powers of the world, not capitalizing on having a guy like Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson on your roster. It just feels like Buffalo has no identity and the culture was never there under his tenure. And I think that largely he's to blame for that. But let me know what you guys think if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan. How are you feeling? This is definitely the end of some type of era, but we're going to have to see if he was really the problem or if there was someone else that should be the blame for all of this. Not much else has really changed in the Atlantic this week. I was going to do a little segment on Detroit. They definitely have looked phenomenal over the past couple of games, but for the most part, I think that these teams are all within an arms race, so let's just kind of go through the summary of this division. Like I just mentioned, Detroit's at the top of this division, playing much better hockey as of late. If they can keep this up, maybe there's a postseason berth for them in the future. Right behind them, though, is Montreal and Boston, who are playing some good hockey lately, but are about 500, having some ups and downs against some tough opponents. Right behind them is Tampa Bay, who has definitely struggled a bit more lately, 3-6-1 in their last 10. But if you believe in this Tampa team, this shouldn't worry you all that much. They're only 1 point back from the Bruins and Canadiens and 2 points back from the division lead. With Florida right behind them, and then rounding out the bottom of this division, we have the usual culprits, Ottawa, Toronto, and then Buffalo, which we gave a big talk about, but we'll see how they can turn things around or if they can get themselves at least into a playoff spot. Now let's flip out west to talk about a trade that happened last week, but given the timing of everything, I wasn't really able to cover it in that last video. The Tristan Jarry for Stuart Skinner trade. Now I have it here for you guys up on the screen. If you've seen this already, you probably can guess that Pittsburgh fleeced on this one. And just a quick backstory on it, Tristan Jarry was a distressed asset in Pittsburgh. This is a guy that was placed on waivers last year after signing a pretty big contract, putting up career low numbers, and it felt like Dubas, if he wanted to move off of that, he was going to have to attach assets or at least retain some of that money. But the Edmontonoilers, they made it so he didn't have to do that. And not only that, but they gave them a goalie in Stuart Skinner who's on an expiring contract, and they got assets along with it. Stuart Skinner wasn't that bad. This is a guy who went to back-to-back Cup finals. Yes, he's been inconsistent this year, but I'm sure there were teams out there who were willing to take on his deal. It's not like it's like Jarry's. This is a guy who has $2 million, I think, going towards the cap. So to see the Oilers give him up and get Jarry back, it almost feels just like a lateral move, but for more money, especially when you consider some of the other guys that they could have got, like Saros or Binnington. And the reason I think this is a bad move for the Oilers is not because I don't like Jarry. It's because I don't like that they got rid of Stuart Skinner in the deal. Give up something else. Don't give him up. Give up Picard. The whole idea of bringing in Jarry was to tandem these two guys because they get inconsistent when they have to play a lot. And if you split the time between the two, you're hoping to get the best type of hockey out of both of them and then be able to rely on one or the other in the playoffs if they start to spiral a bit. And the Oilers basically just, like I said, moved laterally and are now dealing with a guy who is more money, more injury prone, and kind of just as inconsistent as Stuart Skinner. Really just doesn't make that much sense to me. And we saw it the other night against the Bruins. This is game 3 for Jarry with the Oilers, and he's already, I guess, dealing with an injury. I don't know if it's been announced yet. I'll put that on the screen if it has, but just a really weird move for the Oilers, giving up more than I think they had to for a guy like Jarry, and not really moving or threading the needle for me here. I don't know. It's just not that great of a trade, and I don't think I feel any more confident with Jarry in that than I did Skinner. I actually think maybe I feel a little bit less confident. But if you're an Oilers fan or Pittsburgh fan, let me know what you think about this trade in the comments. Is this kind of an overreaction by everyone? Was it really that big of a fleece, or is this a good move for the Oilers, and we'll have to just see how it all plays out in the end? As for the rest of the Pacific, Vegas and Anaheim remain the top 2 seeds for another week. Meanwhile, Edmonton and LA are not far behind, trying to get back in the race. San Jose is switching in and out of a playoff spot, but they're still so fun to watch. Shout out to Macklin Celebrini, top 3 in points with McKinnon and McDavid. Seattle has really dropped off from their early heights with Calgary close behind, and unfortunately, Vancouver is all the way in the basement of their division, placing Elias Pettersson on IR. And of course, the next thing we're going to get into, the Quinn Hughes trade. Perfect segue to the Central Division, and I actually want to talk about 2 things, but only one team with this segment. First, the Minnesota Wild, the Quinn Hughes thing, but also some other things that I think this team could do to make themselves even more of a contender. And then I want to talk about the playoff format because I think we need to have a conversation. Let's start with the trade. And I did a full breakdown on why Vancouver made this move and then another one on why Minnesota made this move. So check those out after this. I'm not going to rehash it all here, but I'll give you guys a quick summary of the trade. Obviously, as you know now, Minnesota won the Quinn Hughes sweepstakes, acquiring him in a deal for Zeev Buryum, Marco Rossi, Liam Ogren, and a 2026 first-round pick. And right away, I think this deal, it makes sense for both sides. Vancouver, they're obviously entering a rebuild. Minnesota, they want to make themselves more of a contender, and both sides did exactly what they needed to do here. Now, obviously, Vancouver would have loved to have kept their franchise defenseman, but given their situation with PD on IR now and them being last in the league, I think this just makes sense at this point. So with Minnesota acquiring Hughes, the real question is, are they more of a contender now with him? And is there something else that they can do to fix this roster? Because personally, I think that they still need some help with their top 6. A lot of people are saying at center. I agree with that with Marco Rossi now gone, but I also think they could use a winger as well. I've been lobbying for Artemi Panarin to go to the Minnesota Wild. I think that that would be a great move if they can make the money work. But if there's a center out there who could help them out depth-wise, say if Boston wants to move off of Pavel Zacha, or if there's someone else out there that I'm not aware of, I guess, at this point, maybe make a move for something like that. But I think Minnesota is in a really good position right now. They have one of the best defenses in the league. They have one of the best goalie tandems in the league. And if they can just, I don't know, get a little bit more production from their top 6 outside of guys like Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek, then I think the sky is really the limit for Minnesota this year. But this perfectly segues into my next segment with this division. I saw a post the other day. The Minnesota Wild, Colorado Avalanche, and Dallas Stars are the best 3 teams in the league. And we're going to see 2 of those teams face off in the first round of the playoffs and one be eliminated, all because of the current playoff format. And that kind of pisses me off. Now, look, I get it. The current system, it's probably better for viewership because it creates more division rivalries and maybe the bracket's a little bit more unpredictable, but come on. The 1 through 8 system is definitely something we need to bring back. A team like Minnesota, if they play well, they shouldn't be punished for that by having to face Dallas in the first round, and vice versa with Dallas. They're second in their division, and unless they grab that top spot, they have to play whoever's coming up as like a really good team right behind them. It's just not right. Say if it was a 1 through 8 format, I think Minnesota would be facing off against Anaheim right now. Anaheim, the team that's very inexperienced, hasn't made the playoffs in a while. And yes, they look good through the regular season, but will likely be a much easier opponent than if you have to face Dallas in the first round, a team that's been to multiple conference finals over the years. I don't know. I don't know how they haven't brought this back yet. I think players, fans, analysts, we've all been saying, please, this is what we want for our playoff picture. But yeah, the divisional playoff bracket, I don't like it this year. I think we're pitting too good of teams up against each other in the earlier rounds, and it really takes the excitement out of the playoffs as they continue to progress. But I know it's not just me. Do you guys agree with me? Do you want to see a 1 through 8 format with the playoffs come back, or do you like the divisional thing and you think that I'm just yapping at this point and complaining about nothing? Let me know in the comments. As for the rest of the Central, we got Avs, Stars, and Wild basically taking control of the division with those top 3 spots. Utah is starting to get back on track, but there's a big point gap between them and Minnesota, so we'll have to see if they can make that up. St. Louis finally starting to put things together, climbing out of the basement. Meanwhile, Chicago without Bedard and Winnipeg without Hellebuck continue to sewer. And rounding things out at the very bottom is Nashville, but all things considered, the storylines in this division continue to improve, and those top three teams are looking real good coming out of the West. And the last team I want to talk about today, the New York Rangers. As someone who's been fully advocating for this team, saying that they're a lot better than the output they're showing us, I got to admit, it's been pretty grim over the last couple of weeks. And not just because they have a terrible home record or that they're pissing off their franchise goalie or that they're dropping big games with their previous franchise stars and captains coming back to just dominate them on home ice. Not because of that, just because I see the talent on this team. And I can't believe that they still haven't figured out how to put it all together. This is a team that's been there and done that. This isn't like a team of young guys like Anaheim or something that's getting their first chance to prove themselves. Like a couple years ago, they were in the conference finals, and to see them implode last year and to carry that into this season with a new head coach and a bunch of changes made to the team, it just, I don't know, it really stinks to see. I really like the players on this team and would love to see them just, I don't know, get some chemistry going and figure things out. Now, I lightly touched on the Artemi Panarin trade. I've seen a couple of reports about how he maybe will go to Minnesota. Maybe there's other teams interested in him. And I think that at this point, that's the best option for the Rangers. I would not re-sign him at this point because I think you would be better off trading him for some assets that you can then flip to bring in another player who maybe is, I don't know, going to spark this team, sort of like what you wanted out of the JT Miller trade last year, but still haven't gotten. That's the only solution I can see for this team right now, unless they can somehow just finally say, hey, we're getting things back on track. We're going to stop healthy scratching players like Zibanejad for being late from traffic. We're going to help out our goalie. We're going to push through this injury with Adam Fox and just, I don't know, get things back on track. As a side note, I did see a report saying that no Centennial team has ever missed the playoffs in their 100th season, so we'll have to see. The Rangers may be that first team, and unfortunately, that's just not a record you want to have. As for the rest of the Metro, Carolina has gained a bit of a lead to take over things while New Jersey drops because of injuries. Thankfully, it looks like Jack Hughes is going to come back earlier than expected, and they desperately need that. The New York Islanders look incredible, maybe one of the biggest surprises through just 2.5 months of the season, with Philly also putting up some good numbers. Shout out to Zegras, who's playing some really good hockey, maybe the best of his career right now. With Washington also in the mix right behind them. And then we have rounding out the bottom, like I said, Pittsburgh and New York, with Columbus still in last place. All right, guys, quick interruption. Overnight, there were a few trades that happened right after I finished editing this video. So I at least wanted to toss them in here to give you guys my, quick reaction to those. The first one was Phillip Danault being traded to Montreal for a second-round pick. And honestly, this one, it doesn't really do much for me. Phillip Danault is a good two-way center, but offensively, it's not exactly what the Canadiens are looking for right now. Later down the line is when I think this trade is going to have its most impact. When you get Alex Newhook and Kirby Dach back from injury and your lineup is fully healthy, Phillip Danault can then slot in that third line and really help this forward core be more well-rounded because he is more of a two-way center than anything else. So, yeah, nothing too crazy here with Montreal, but a move that I felt like they probably needed to make at this point with them going back and forth in their last 10 games. And the second trade that happened overnight, we had Mason Marchment being traded from Seattle to Columbus. And if you guys remember in the offseason, Seattle traded a third and a fourth to get Marchment. And in this trade, they get a second and a fourth back. So not only did they recoup their assets, but they improved. And I think that this is fine for Seattle. I like Mason Marchment being on that team. I think he added an additional offensive layer that they kind of needed. And maybe they're just accepting that this isn't their season and that the future is more important, which I sort of agree with. So that's from the Seattle side. And for Columbus, again, it doesn't really do much for me, just like the Danault to Montreal trade. It's a player that on this team, he might inspire them a little bit in the room, get them to play a little bit harder. But in the end, I don't think Mason Marchment's going to be the difference maker to get Columbus from being in last place to then in the playoffs. But two big moves that happened across the league. Let me know what you think about both and who do you think won both of these deals. But that's all I got for today's recap. Just going to read off a few comments before I sign off, with the first one coming from Oh Yeah Sure, who says, sorry, these are two of the worst Stadium Series jerseys I've ever seen. Horrible design. I don't know. I disagree. I love the creativity. I think that Tampa and Boston did a good job, but let me know what you guys think. I didn't see too many comments about this. Did you like the jerseys? Do you not like them? Drop your thoughts below. The next comment comes from @Jason3AN, who says, why are people stuck on Binnington? Because he won a cup back in 2019, 6 years ago, and because he barely held on to get one win in those two games against the USA? I don't know. It's so weird. He's a big game goalie. That's why. No, he hasn't put up fantastic stats this year, but look at his numbers from previous years. He's been snubbed from Vezina conversations. I think he was even nominated for a Vezina in recent years, and he's playing behind the Blues defense that has been really shaky. So I don't know. I think Binnington has stepped up in some big moments and was a big reason for the Blues even making the playoffs last year, and he just barely was losing that game against the Jets where he could have advanced them to round 2. So I don't know. I don't get the Binnington hate. I know he's kind of a prick, not the nicest guy, but like, he's a good goalie and he's a big game goalie. That's why people are stuck on him. And the last comment comes from @KevinWood44, who says, Bo is a much better two-way player than Morgan Geekie. If Canada chose Geekie over Horvat, it would be criminal. Not to take away from Morgan Geekie's season so far, he just isn't on Bo's level. It's like apples to oranges. They're such different players. Bo's a good playmaker, a good two-way center. Meanwhile, Morgan Geekie's more of a winger, and he's a goal scorer. So it really just depends on the needs that Team Canada has. I don't think it's criminal either way. I think they both should at least get a look. In the end, I don't think either one will make it, but we're talking about a guy who's second in goals behind Nathan MacKinnon this year. It's not criminal if he gets chosen over Bo Horvat, but yeah, that's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up, subscribe now. I also have a few other pieces of content for you guys to check out here on the screen. I'll throw the Minnesota trade with Quinn Hughes on the left and my last weekly recap on the right, so check those out. And again, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next upload.